and again, my own authorship in Lost, I have to say there were a bunch of other writers on the show. There was JJ at its inception. There was Carlton all the way through. There were amazingly talented writers in the writer's room. But I take responsibility and authorship for Lost in terms of my own feelings about the ending, and I make no apologies for it. I do feel like that was the ending that I wanted to do, and I was always comfortable with the ambiguity of the show. And I think that that there were times if there was one regret that I had, there were times over the course of the show where in interviews I said, the answers are coming. But if I challenge you to look at any interview that I gave post the middle of season 3, which was the turning point, when they said, we can now give you an end date to the show. Because up until then, there was a degree of improvisation that had to occur because we didn't know how many of these things we were going to do or how long we were going to be around to be doing them. Once we said there's going to be 48 episodes left, at that point a firm plan had to come into motion. Then from that point on, I think that I started saying publicly, if you are watching the show for the answers to your mysteries, you're not going to like the ending. And I will pull, at least 10 instances of Carlton and I saying this in interviews in major publications and on television. And I'll say, hey, if you didn't do your due diligence and listen to what we had to say, you were warned.
Right.
And it's not that I didn't care about the mythology of the show. I just feel like many shows have come and gone that are very focused on their mysteries and their mythologies and their ambiguity. And there is no worse scene in the history of genre than the architect explaining to Neo everything that happened in the Matrix. I wasn't going to fucking touch that with a 10-foot pole.
That is a particularly awful instance of over-explanation, of like feeling like you owe it to the audience.
Right, okay, so we have the architect, and then we have Lost. And the Lost is not enough, and the architect is too much. And somewhere in between is just right, and I'm going to always be closer to Lost than I am to the architect, because that is just not interesting to me.
Right.
And I think like my own storytelling, the things that capture my imagination and make me want to re-engage are sometimes frustrating and challenging. But for Lost, it was like, by the way, I will actually answer any questions that you have about the show, but I won't say, oh, here's what it was. I will actually refer you. I'll give you the required reading if you're worried about what the numbers were all about or what was Walt's purpose. Or
those aren't the things that actually bother me. I was sitting here. I've just been sitting here listening to you talk about it, and I realized I wasn't disappointed with with Lost not giving me answers at the end. What I was actually disappointed with the answer it gave, which it felt like the answer was all of the things that just happened didn't really mean anything. They kind of didn't happen. That was my takeaway from it.
What do you mean they didn't happen?
It was like all of the things that happened, all of these things that were set up as, you've got to stop the Man in Black because X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
It didn't matter.
Right.
Well, because it wasn't real.
Yes, it was.
Well, but not really. I mean, it was like a shared fantasy. I mean, it didn't seem like there was
No.
So the things that were going on the island were happening in the actual world?
Yes.
I cannot believe we're talking about this, by the way, because I had no plans to get into a detailed conversation about it. So they were happening in our timeline.
Correct. I mean, yes. I mean, there's no Oceanic Airlines in our
No. I mean, but in the real world, not in this kind of moment before death fantasy world where everybody's trying to find each other so they can go to heaven.
No, correct. So at the end of the show, the last frame of the show, Matthew Fox closes his eye and dies.
Yeah.
That happened. In our context of happening. That happened. That's all real. Then, from the moment that he closed his eye, all that other stuff that we did in the 6th season of the show, the flash sideways, where nobody knows each other, and the plane never crashed, that is whatever your interpretation is. I'm not going to talk about what our intention is, but that's what you would define as not having happened or happening. But everything that we ever showed you, anything that takes place on the island in Lost, happened. Absolutely 100%. The plane crashed, those people survived, everything that you saw throughout those 6 seasons, like somehow
the whole struggle between good and bad, that's like a really meaningful thing that actually occurred.
Yes.
That would have threatened the universe had it not been.
The Dharma Initiative is real. The island is real. All those Hurley right now at this moment in time, Hurley and Ben, and with some help from Walt, are actually running things on the island, maintaining it.
This is
per the ending
you
of
had
the
to
show.
think about this for the movie that could have potentially happened, right?
No, I mean, well, look, I don't want to ruin the mystery and ambiguity of the show in terms of talking about our intention, but I do feel like one of the things that we always wanted to do and we're very passionate about doing was exploring the idea of purgatory, both figuratively and literally. And this was so obvious to the audience that within 3 or 4 episodes of the first season of the show, they were like, it's purgatory, right? They're all dead. And we kept saying, we swear to God, they are not all dead. This is really happening. But the audience is telling us that they really want some sort of clinical evaluation of an afterlife.
Right.
And purgatory is about judgment. And this show has never really offered up what I would call Christian Judeo judgment in terms of there's a deity. It's always about self-judgment. So the idea of like, does Jack think that he's worthy? Or can Sawyer forgive himself for his sins? Or did Kate kill her stepfather justifiably? So I always felt like if the characters can forgive themselves, then they can. Then the show's over. Show's called Lost. It's not because they're on an island. It's because they're lost. So
right.
So how are we going to creatively demonstrate that self-forgiveness? We're gonna do this idea. And so there was an interpretation. I think a large part of it came from ABC's decision to run footage of the plane wreckage over the end credits of the finale, and we publicly got out and said, oh my God, that was not our idea.
Right.